Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You know that because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. I've got my coffee ready, knees weak, arms spaghetti, and it's a great day. It is a fantastic day, a fantastic Friday here on the Russ Joy Show. Why? Is it because there's something big happening in Philadelphia? Yes. I was actually in the midst. I'll pull back the curtain here for a second before we dive into things. I was in the midst of making the thumbnail for the episode, as I tend to do. Yeah, I was supposed to do it before I took my kids to the bus stop and I forgot, but it's fine. So as I'm making it, I see breaking news, breaking Sixers news, and I go, "Oh, what happened? Did the mayor come out and say once again that she backs an arena that they don't really have approval for yet?" No, not that. That was earlier in the week. We'll talk about that at some point. But no, breaking news that Joel Embiid has signed a contract extension with your team, your town, your Philadelphia 76ers. And so that sent everything that I had already been working on with the thumbnail and the description and everything of the episode. I had to blow it up. So that's probably going to be our big story of the day. So let's do what they do here on the YouTube, all right? We're going to preview the show a little bit. We got Joel Embiid, an extension. We've got a little bit of news about the Sixers arena. We've got Taijuan Walker got torched. Who saw that coming? Look at there too. Nothing quite like being in a race for the National League crown, home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and just sending Taijuan Walker back out. What could possibly go wrong? 8 runs. That's what could go wrong. It's fine. No big deal. Doesn't matter. Yeah, we'll get there too. Flyers camp open. Torts appears very enthused about the rope. They were talking about that on social media. We'll talk about that. We can actually now recap and react a little bit to Sean Couturier, what he said on Snow the Goalie this week. And of course, the Eagles are about to take on the Saints on Sunday in a game that could end up being a high-scoring affair. It could just be high-scoring on one side. We'll find that out as well. Now, many people already checking in over on X, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you check in over on Instagram Live, I love and appreciate each and every one of you who are out there as well. I can't pull your comment up on the screen, but if you leave a comment over there, I have a running tally here of any comments that get left, and I'll make sure to read yours out on the show. I will have you know, what's going on with Instagram Live. But every time I stream to my account, I then get this fraudulent activity notice from Instagram every time. They might shut down my Instagram at some point. If I do Crossing Broadcast or I do Snow the Goalie, there's no problem. But I do my show on my account, and all of a sudden they're like, suspicious activity. Yeah, I'm just yelling to a bunch of wonderful Philadelphia sports fans. We have a lot to get into, many things to get into. Let's go over to the comments real quick. Andrew Fawcett checks in this morning, all caps. Oh, yes! Also says Friday is the new Thursday. Josh White, good morning to everyone except Taijuan Walker. Joe Papel says, hello from Voorhees. Joe's camping out for Flyers camp. Allison asks the question that really matters. How was rehearsal? For those of you who didn't know about it, if you haven't been following along over on the Twitter, over on X, I will have you know right now, the San Filippo wedding, I think, is going to happen. Maria did not run away when presented with the fact that Anthony's going to be her husband. She did not run away. Let me see if I could throw this onto the screen really quick, just to give you an idea of how bizarre and strange and what a weird... I had a moment with Ant where I said, what a weird relationship we have, that after all this time, this is where our friendship has taken us. We started doing a show 7 years ago. Was it 7? Maybe it was 8. I think it was 7 years ago. This was us at the rehearsal. We're not getting married to each other, thankfully. But we had a lovely time. And absolute gem, his family, gem, great people. A lot of Italians. It was good people. Good people. That's going to be a fun wedding on Saturday. I can't tell you where it's at. Can't reveal any of the details. Somebody said over on Snow the Goalie that there's apparently a fan group that's going to crash the wedding. Don't know if that's true. Would be funny. But it's going to work. They're going to get married. It's going to be great. Hopefully everybody stands where they're supposed to stand. I have written the entire wedding celebration script. I did not use one of the universal life of whatever the hell. I just went and I wrote the thing. I sent it to the San Filippos for their approval. They approved. Things are great. It should be a nice wedding. I would say keep an eye on the Snow the Goalie accounts this weekend because Bundy's probably going to try to commandeer them and put out some ridiculous stuff from this weekend, okay? That's what's likely going to happen. So it's a lot of fun. Anyway, Jamie checks in, says, what a nice picture. Thank you. Appreciate that. And Josh is one of the ones who had the realization at some point down the line. We're like, hold on a second. This is always one of my fun favorite things. We're going to get into Philly sports here in a second. I was living a double life while I was a teacher because I was like writing on the side and I was doing Snow the Goalie and I was doing crossing broadcast. And like, I didn't tell anybody. Like a few of my coworkers knew. I think my principal at the time knew. One of the assistant principals who I really liked, he knew. And I think that was it. A couple of coworkers, maybe. Occasionally a student would find it. I'd always have to be careful. I couldn't curse, right? Because we have unrealistic standards for what teachers are allowed to say or do, even though they're not in their classroom. Like you can't post a picture with you holding a glass of beer lest you get reported to a superintendent that, oh my gosh, this adult had a beer. Can you imagine? What a horrible example they're setting for kids. You say ass on a podcast, you say shit on a podcast, and all of a sudden it's, World War III. So I tried to, keep these things under wraps. But then people started figuring it out. Like my last year or so, I was just like, fuck it, I don't care. I'm just going to, you want to have a show? It's fine. Josh and his brother, Christian, they figured it out at some point. Andrew says about the San Filippo wedding, they're all named Paul and they're married to girls named Maria. No, not yet. Nico with a good morning. Ford always likes to bring this up. And he's right. He used to be a teacher. Just ask me. That's exactly right. All right. Let's get into some of the stuff that happened. Now, I do want to start with the breaking news, right? Because it is important. Now, whether or not you think it's the most important story of the day, it's totally up to you, your call. We no longer have Woj bombs. That has also happened since the last time we spoke. Adrian Wojnarowski, who we all lovingly refer to as Woj, is now gone. He's gotten out of the breaking news game. Big opportunity. Shams, many believe, could end up being the guy to go replace him at ESPN. He currently works for The Athletic. I don't know what the terms of his agreement are. A lot of people think that Shams is going to end up at ESPN. We'll see if that happens. But Shams breaks the news on a Friday morning. What time was that at? It was like 8. Right about 8 o'clock. Joel Embiid says he is signing a contract extension with the Philadelphia 76ers. The one-time NBA MVP will sign a 3-year, $193 million maximum extension with the Sixers with a player option in the 2028-2029 season. Right? Sources tell The Athletic. Let's break this down for a second. Now, if you are worried about what this could mean for the Sixers down the line, you are well within your right. Okay? We need to have I hate doing the Kevin Kincaid methodology of, two things can be true. It could just be a real nothing burger. You have to have a moment where you have to kind of divorce two ideas, okay? Things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Like we can have a moment here where we say, oh my gosh, I need this watch to stop listening to me. It's freaking me out. We have to have a moment here, if you're a Sixers fan. Could there be real concern about Joel Embiid's ability to stay, to remain healthy at any point between now and the end of this deal, which could possibly go as long as the end of 2029? Yeah, you should be worried. You should be concerned. Of course you should. The man has had a myriad injuries, right? Tons of them. All over the place. Orbital bones, navicular bone, his back, other parts of his face, gastroenteritis that just pops up in big moments. There have been a lot of injuries. Sure. Do I think that, you had much of a choice if you're the Sixers? Well, no, I don't think you do. You have a couple of things going on. If you're the Sixers, you have this guy who's won an MVP, who has probably played the best basketball that he will play. I don't see there being another level to Joel Embiid. Now, given what Paul George could be for this team, if he also remains healthy, and what Tyrese Maxey has shown himself to be, is there a scenario where the gravity that Paul George has, if he's able to pull guys out of the paint, because unlike Tobias Harris, Paul George is an actual threat from anywhere on the court, could that open things up for Embiid to be more dominant in the post? Sure. Do I think that Joel Embiid enjoys being in the post as much as we maybe want him to be? No. But like in theory, is there another level he can go to? Is he going to score 35 a game? Is he going to score 38 a game? You would hope that like just based on the team that they've put around him, he doesn't have to. You would hope that like, I don't know, is he going to become more of a menace on the boards? Is he going to become a more dominant interior defender, racking up more blocks? Like I don't see another level to Joel Embiid's game. But if you can have him at like 85, 90% of what he was in his MVP season, and you can have that from now until the end of this contract, or from now until the end of like, let's say 2027. And then he regresses a little bit in the last couple of years. It'll be a lot of money. The cap will continue to go up. The percentage of the cap that his money will be responsible for will probably go down over time. It's a lot of money. It's more than $60 million a year. It's like what, 64, what, 64.3 million a year, I think, something like that. 6, 12, 18, fours. I think it's about right. 64 and a third million per year for those last 3 years. Like that's crazy. That's an insane amount of money. And yet at the same time, if you're the Sixers, what other choice did you have? He's the face of your franchise. You're in the midst of this kind of like ugly battle for a new arena. You went 76th place, where the mayor came out and said that she approves it. I think I might actually bring up her quotes here in a minute, because a lot of people seem to think that like just because the mayor said it's going to happen, or that there's an agreement, that arena is going to get built right now, like right away, and that there's not going to be any further discussion about it. And there's going to be no further protests or whatever about it. Like we have to have an honest conversation there. But if you're the Sixers, like what exactly was your other option? You couldn't potentially let him become a lame duck. You couldn't potentially get to a point where like a couple years down the line when his contract was set to expire, that you say, oh, Joel, how about you come back for like 20 million? Like, no, he's the face of your franchise. He is the most recognizable Philadelphia 76er since Iverson. Some would argue that he is the most likable. It depends. Most likable Sixer, since if you want to say Iverson, he certainly is well above and beyond the era of Sixers basketball where we had Andre Iguodala as the face of the franchise. He's he's legitimately better than anyone who was here, the prior decade ahead of Iverson. He's won an MVP. He hasn't gotten past the second round. There are legitimate concerns about whether or not you can build an entire team around a guy who plays this style, the traditional center, who also has the range to go out and hit threes from time to time. None of that has changed. But if you're the Sixers, like you have to have that guy. He's going to, in theory, be a 76er for life. He will go on to be an ambassador for this team, the same way that Dr. J has been, the same way that Moses Malone sort of was, the way that, I don't know, you could maybe see Iverson continuing. Like Iverson's affiliation with the team has been there. I don't know if I'd say he was like a massive ambassador for the team. He has a lot of other sponsorships and like other lifelong sponsorships that I kind of associate him with, maybe even a little bit more. Dr. J's probably the best comp. Does Embiid move into TV when his career is done, kind of like Charles Barkley, and kind of take that role where he's a Sixer for life and is kind of an ambassador of sorts in that role? Like maybe it's possible. But if you're the Sixers, like I don't see another option. Like I don't see what else you could have done. And so if you're a Sixers fan, like you should feel good about it. Have the fear around his injury. That will always be there. That will never go away. Unless he has like a legitimate career-ending injury, then you won't have the worry because you'll know it's done. Other than that, like, no, you should be concerned and that's okay. But at the same time, be happy. Like there is a scenario here. It was probably an unlikely one. But like if you go back a year and a half, you would listen to podcasts from around the league. And I would listen to Bill Simmons on the Ringer Podcast Network, brought to you by something. And they would talk about the fact that Embiid maybe wants to force his way to the Knicks, that the Knicks would be a great landing spot for Joel Embiid. There had been potential, rumors going around about a year ago about a Julius Randle and additional assets for Joel Embiid if the Sixers ever wanted to get out from underneath. I have no idea if that was ever going to happen. I have no idea if Embiid ever really did have eyes for New York. What you should feel good about is if he's able to maintain his level of play, if he's able to be an MVP caliber player, you now have him locked in for the rest of his career, because I don't see him playing much beyond 2029. Maybe he will, maybe another year or two. Just based on his body, based on his age, we have to be realistic here. If you are trying to lure free agents longer term, maybe not this year, maybe the year after, if you're just looking at it from the perspective of trying to get guys to buy in on being a waiver wire pickup around the trade deadline, about being a veteran who's looking for a team to sign with next offseason, the year after, those guys who kind of hold out longer into the offseason, maybe don't get the deal they're looking for. You have Embiid under contract on a massive extension. You have Tyrese Maxey under contract on a massive extension. You have Paul George here on a massive contract with many years. Your big three are locked in. Whether it works or not remains to be seen. But if you're a Sixers fan, you at least don't have to have the constant nagging worry about what happens if one of these guys leaves. They're all here. Now, can players force their way out? Sure they can. But otherwise, it's a happy day if you're a Sixers fan. I'm going to go over to the comments because I'm sure there are people who are loving this extension and there are people who are wondering why the hell it happened in the first place. Let us go over to the comments section because we love the comments. You can join over on YouTube, X, Facebook, and like I said, Instagram Live. I'll also take your comments over there. And I see Alex Longer 10 over on Instagram Live was asking some questions. I'll get to those when we get to those topics. But let's see. Ford says, I still say the Sixers never win a title with Embiid. Like I said, there are people who are going to think that, who are going to say that. And he notes, let's pay hundreds of millions to a dude who gets injured every year and older. Got it. Connor Allen with a very astute point. He has to be on the team for the arena opening. I think that's entirely possible. There's this idea of, Andrew says, like the Lakers with LeBron. Ford says they signed a dude who is constantly hurt for hundreds of millions. Andrew Fawcett says paying for past performance is always a great idea. I sense a lot of sarcasm there. Let's see. There's a lot going on between those two over in the comments. Christian says very optimistic about the Sixers team. Finally have a well-rounded roster, big players locked in, and a competent coach. I think the coaching part of this is the other big thing. Like, there had been a little bit of fear when the Sixers got rid of Doc Rivers. Embiid seemed a little bit upset by it. Like, there had been kind of like not the rumors, but like some of the whispers around the team were that Embiid actually liked Doc and that getting rid of him, did they consult with him before they made that move? Nick Nurse comes in, solid enough year. Looked like he was installing some like better systems overall. The Sixers, I think, were a more dangerous team last year. I think they're certainly going to be a much more dangerous team with Paul George. Second year of Nick Nurse knowing what he has to work with. I tend to agree. I'm optimistic. Do I think the Sixers are going to win the East? No. I think they're going to load manage a lot with Paul George and with Joel Embiid. I don't exactly expect to see these guys play 80 games. I don't expect them to even play 75. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw their big three play like 65 games or fewer together. I just think that that's going to be the way that they're going to manage the season. They know this all about the postseason. And that if you line these teams up head-to-head, healthy, the Sixers are better than every team in the Eastern Conference except for probably Boston from top to bottom. Now, if you want to shorten the rotation to 7 or 8 players, maybe there's a case to be made. There's another team that comes close. Could the Knicks, like if they can figure out what to do with Julius Randle and the Nova Knicks, is there a scenario where the Knicks are maybe as good as the Sixers on a shortened rotation? Maybe. Do you want to make the case about the Bucks? I wouldn't right now. Are the Bucks big two arguably as good as the Sixers? Sure. If Dame somehow comes back to the guy that he was in Portland, more so than what we saw out of him a lot in Milwaukee last year, then yes, like in theory, Milwaukee is still a threat. But that's it. Like, you're not going to convince me that Orlando is going to take 4 steps forward to be a real threat. You're not going to convince me that, like, Cleveland is a threat. You can't really convince me that Jimmy Butler's Miami Heat are a legitimate threat. So it really does come down to, like, those 4 teams at the top. It's Philly, it's Boston, it's New York, and maybe Milwaukee. But again, like, if everything goes the way it's supposed to, and if Nick Nurse is the coach that you think he is, they should be able to get into the second round, hopefully past it, and then you likely play Boston in the Eastern Conference Final, and then you let the chips fall where they may. At some point, you have to exercise that demon, and you have to get to the NBA Finals. You continue to pay this money to Joel Embiid now. You've paid it to Max. You've paid it to Paul George. You got to build that team around them, and you have to figure it out, and these guys have to step up in big moments. We'll come back out. Nico says, love how the Sixers core is finally locked in for a couple of years. It's more than a couple of years. I mean, it's very many years. And he also says next 3 years will be huge. I agree with that. Christian says Tibbs is going to run the Knicks into the ground physically. Boston may have the hangover. Giannis may one out at some point. 2 to 4 seed is realistic for playoffs. I think that they probably finish with the 3rd seed. I wouldn't be surprised if you end up in a scenario where the Sixers are kind of playing the playoff seeding game, assuming Boston is the top seed, which good chance that they could be. The Sixers might try to jockey to avoid the Celtics for as long as they can. You get to that number 2, that number 3, you're in better shape. You don't want to be the 4th seed necessarily and have to get to Boston in a semifinal. That's not what you want. Get to the Eastern Conference Final, then figure it out. Josh White asks, how about TJ McConnell's Pacers? I don't believe they're real. I don't. I think they're an okay team. I think they're a perfectly acceptable playoff team in the Eastern Conference. I don't think that they're a threat of any kind. Somebody can bookmark this, and if like the Pacers go to the NBA Finals next year, come back to this, by all means, I will eat crow. I just don't see it. I think they're a fine team. Sometimes there's nothing wrong in the NBA with having a team that is a good playoff team. And I wouldn't even consider the Pacers a bubble playoff team. They're probably like a 5th or 6th seed, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. There's even a scenario where like Milwaukee falters a little bit. They fall to 5 and Indy like goes up to 4. And then you say, all right, like very nice season by the Pacers, but they don't have the top end talent that you need to be successful. Halliburton is a very good player. But outside of that, like there's not a lot on the Pacers that I look at and that I would fear if I were a coach of one of the more elite teams in the Eastern Conference. That's where I'm at on the Pacers. I think they're a perfectly fine team. I have nothing bad to say about the Pacers. Ford says they won't win the East. Will they get to the finals? So what is the point? I don't know what that means. If they make it to the finals, I like the Sixers' potential matchups coming out of the West. I still think that all things considered, if you end up taking on the Nuggets, I like Embiid against Jokic in a head-to-head matchup. Historically, Embiid has done well against Jokic. I think it's a perfectly fine matchup. I don't see the Warriors having some kind of a resurgence. I don't see them having a massive turnaround. Dallas is a really good team. Dallas could be a tough matchup. There's some teams out west that like maybe scare you a bit. But oddly enough, like I think that the Sixers match up with a lot of those Western Conference teams better than they match up with Boston. So it really is like if you could just get past, or if you can get like Miami to pull off an upset in the first round or whatever against Boston and clear the way. I like the Sixers against any other team in the conference, and I'd like them against a lot of the teams that could come out of the West. Anyway, it's a good day. It's a big day if you're a Sixers fan. Joel Embiid signs an extension, could potentially be here through the 2028-29 season. Now, that wasn't something that I originally planned on talking about. There is something that I did plan on talking about, and I believe it's the second thing in the title of the episode, and it's also one of the things featured in the thumbnail. As some of you have figured out, there's a character limit on YouTube and on Facebook of how many things can go into the title of an episode, and there are certain reasons that I like to include some. So you'll see in the thumbnail that Saquon Barkley's in there, but it's not mentioned in the title. We will talk about Saquon Barkley and the Eagles. It's also in the description of the episode. But the thing that we had to talk about, the thing that we absolutely had to talk about, the thing that had me unbelievably pissed off, even though I didn't watch it live. We all know I was doing the Anthony Sanfilippo wedding rehearsal. I couldn't watch it live. Thank goodness I couldn't. Is that once again, Taijuan Walker got his face kicked in. Taijuan Walker got to go out and be the 5th starter again because none of the other guys that they've handed the ball to have been able to like put any kind of consistent performance together that's been anything other than bad. And so Rob Thompson, Dave Dombrowski, some combination of the two, some combination of someone else said, you know what? Let's do the good baseball thing. I have an idea. What if we put Taijuan Walker back out there? I don't know why they're getting this voice. I should make it a really, what Rob Thompson's came. Oh, hey, Dave, I was just thinking, we haven't been able to have anybody go out there and give us a good performance on the 5th day. So I was thinking maybe we'll go back to Taijuan. Like, Taijuan Walker sucks. I know people like wanted me to get like really irritated and up over the top and like start yelling like I did about Bryce Huff on Tuesday. But like, I can't even be angry anymore. I can't. Taijuan Walker stinks. He's horrific. but we've all known that he's horrific. And like that game on Thursday night, which again, I caught up on this morning, I did not watch every pitch of. I'm watching as the game is unfolding. You see Taijuan Walker give back-to-back home runs in the first. Immediately, your first thought, if you're Rob Thompson, is, oh shit, okay, he might not have it. I mean, I don't think Taijuan Walker ever really has it, but you go, all right, back-to-back home runs with 2 outs in the first, not ideal. Then you start to worry, are the Phillies' bats going to be silent in this game, or are they going to show up? Trey Turner gets the game tied back up. And then what happens in the third inning? Taijuan Walker begins to implode. Then what happens? Taijuan Walker gets to go back out for the 4th inning. And we all know it doesn't matter if you watch every pitch. It doesn't matter if you've watched every game. It is just something that we all know to be true. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal in Major League Baseball, except for Taijuan Walker. He is not a Major League Baseball player. He is not a Major League Baseball pitcher on a team that has World Series aspirations. He imploded. He imploded in the worst way. And the best thing is, if you go back and you listen to the Mets telecast of the home run that's hit in the third, that I think puts the Mets up to 6 runs, they say, I don't know how long Taijuan Walker is going to have here. And then ball hits bat hits ball flies in air, ball leaves the park. The game is effectively over. It doesn't matter what happens from that point on. The Mets are riding an emotional high. Taijuan Walker ends up getting charged with 8 runs in a mediocre at best performance. He stinks. We can't even at this point, like if you last night got yourself worked up about Taijuan Walker and about how bad he's been, I hate to tell you, you shouldn't have even turned on the game because we all knew how it was going to pan out. 8 runs is the least surprising outcome. Rob Thompson apparently said in the postgame, it didn't work out. My fault. Like, what the hell? What are we doing here? He's a horrific pitcher. And some people like to come back to, it's not Rob Thompson's decision. It's Dave Dombrowski's. And I've been the one to say for quite a while now, right? Dombrowski wanted to be able to look like a smart baseball executive. He hung on to this idea of Taijuan Walker being a difference maker or being somebody who at the very least can be a competent 5th starter. And maybe there's some influence from the front office saying to Rob Thompson, hey, listen, dude, these other guys haven't worked out. Phillips hasn't worked out. Allard hasn't worked out. Like, these guys just they're not getting it done. What's the worst that can happen? I think Taijuan had like a 3-inning performance in relief a few games ago, and he was like sort of okay. And you're like, all right, maybe that's a positive sign. Maybe we can put him back in the rotation. Maybe he can hold it down. I think they only needed 2 more starts or whatever out of the 5th starter. And like, maybe he can go out and just like keep us close. He didn't. And the worst part is you saw it unfolding before your eyes that like he didn't have it. And there was no reason for him to go back out for the 4th. There was none. Except that you wanted him to try to eat innings and you were willing to like give this game up and you were willing to effectively concede this game. The problem with that, of course, is that like you are still in a legitimate battle for the home field advantage, not just in the National League, but in all of Major League Baseball. Like you could potentially put yourself in contention to host the World Series. I mean, as of recording, right? As of recording Friday morning, you are level with the Dodgers at 91-62. That, by the way, is better than any team in the AL. The Yankees are 89-64. The Guardians are 89-65. Right now, it is a 2-horse race. I mean, it's more than that. But in the National League, it's the Phillies and it's the Dodgers. And the last thing that you can do is essentially say, we're fine just giving up on this game. Leaving Taijuan Walker in because you don't want to burn out your bullpen, because you think he can eat innings, is giving that game up. And if ultimately this comes down to a 1-game determining factor between getting home field in the National League, getting home field in all of Major League Baseball, in the playoffs, potentially in the World Series, if it all came down to your inability to give up on Taijuan Walker, your stubbornness, your refusal to fire him into the sun, whether it's Rob Thompson, whether it's Dave Dombrowski, whoever it is, that could ultimately be the thing that dooms this team. Taijuan freaking Walker. Now, again, I know a lot of people want me to be angry, and I could do it, and maybe I could fake it, but I don't even have anger left because I don't think Taijuan Walker is a bad human being, right? Like, there are no reports that like Taijuan Walker has these like has skeletons in his closet, and we can all just have a moment to clown him. I, at this point, feel bad for Taijuan Walker. I think Taijuan Walker is an absolutely atrocious starting pitcher. Kudos to him for making it to the big leagues. That's great. He stinks. This is more on the front office for not addressing this very clear hole in their rotation. This is on the front office for not finding a better option. This is perhaps on this front office for not having another veteran who's even playing at AAA who could come in and maybe make a difference, who could potentially be called up. This is maybe on the front office for not exploring other options at the trade deadline, even if it's not for a number 2 pitcher, just somebody who can come in and be a consistent 5th starter, keep you in games, give you the chance to extend a lead and potentially get home field advantage. They didn't address it. They dropped the ball. Now, people want to make excuses for Dave Dombrowski. They certainly can. And if the Phillies ultimately get home field advantage, it'll be fine. Everybody can come back and they can say, Russ, you're an idiot. You're a jackass. You got yourself all worked up for no reason. But like, this is the kind of thing that legitimate teams shouldn't be having to deal with. This isn't the kind of thing that a World Series contender should have to deal with. And you could point around. Some people do.
All these teams in Major League Baseball, they don't have good 5th starters either, Russ. No team has a great 5th starter, Russ. It's unfair.
I don't give a shit. You have a big market team, fans who are shelling out copious amounts of cash. You have an owner who said, get me my effing trophy back, all that. Then put the money where the mouth is. Go out and get a better option. Or develop somebody in the minors who could have come up and potentially done at least a better job than giving up 8 runs in fewer than 4 innings like Taijuan Walker. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not crazy. I just expect a little bit better. I'm going to go over to the comments about Taijuan Walker. See if anybody else is really upset here. Walker's jersey number matches his ERA, says Andrew Fawcett. Josh White says he's not pushing off and following through at all. He was tapping out at 89. Bad control, bad body language. The list goes on and on. Lenda Joseph says, I hate Torts, but Taijuan Walker belongs in the Chateau Bow Wow, never to be seen again. Yeah. The Chateau Bow Wow, for those who don't follow on Snow the Goalie. Chateau Bow Wow is where Bundy jokes. Torts takes the players that he doesn't like him, sends them to the doghouse. Taijuan Walker as a reliever isn't the ideal outcome, but him being in and like them relying on him to potentially eat innings against the Mets, who like are now within 6 games. I don't like, do we see an epic collapse here? Like, I don't at this point. You've played 153 games. Like, I think a 6-game lead with 8 to play is probably safe. Or sorry, 9 to play is safe. You would have to hope that that's safe. So it's not even that like you're blowing it and potentially putting your division on the line. It's just more that like this kind of shit shouldn't be happening at the end of the season. It just shouldn't. Dean Hartscrabble. I don't think I've seen this name on YouTube before. Dean, thanks for finding the show. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, all that. Says he sucks. You know it. I know it. Every team in the gosh darn league knows it. He's a guaranteed loss every freaking time. I'd rather Allard or Phillips because at least they get a chance to win. The thing is that like Phillips and Allard were both good stories in their own right. I don't necessarily disagree. Like, I don't view either of those guys necessarily as being somebody that like you're going to build the team around going forward where you're worried about them having their spirits crushed, or if they go out and have a bad start that it's going to ruin them and ruin their love of baseball. I just don't get why this team felt the need to go back to Taijuan, other than to say maybe he can end on a high note, and that maybe going into the postseason, like we can rely on him to come out of the pen. Maybe it's like the long relief guy if we need him, or if like Rangers hurt or something, that like you build his confidence back up and he goes into the playoffs as a confident pitcher. But like at this point, I wouldn't even roster him. Like if you're making the playoff roster right now, I don't see how Taijuan Walker makes it onto that roster, unless, God forbid, there is an injury to one of your top 3 starters, or top 4 starters rather. But even in that case, like, I don't know, I might just like go do what Charlie Manuel did and like go find Pedro Martinez. And I'd rather have, ghost white Pedro Martinez looking like he's going to throw up on his jersey at his age right now, go out and like throw BP than watch Taijuan Walker suit up for the Phillies again. Jamie notes, all of the fifth starters are bad. Allard couldn't throw a simple four-seam fastball that didn't sail high out of the zone in his last start. Phillips can't locate. Johnson not ready for the majors. Yeah, but I think if nothing else, maybe it's just the optics of it, and maybe it's just the mentality of fans going into games. If Allard or Phillips are on the mound, I don't have high expectations, but I'm also not going to shit on these guys because they're not getting paid what Taijuan Walker got paid to come in and be a major league pitcher. Taijuan, it's again, I can't even get mad. I feel bad for the guy. He can't. It's the thing that a lot of people I just don't think wrap their heads around. There is nobody who's unsuccessful at the pro level who's happy that they're unsuccessful. Taijuan Walker doesn't get done that game, go home and laugh about it and say, well, at least I'm making all this money. Your professional reputation is being harmed by how poorly you've pitched. And ultimately, if you don't get rostered for another playoff run, it looks horrific for you. And it also looks horrific if you at the end of this year say, I think I want a fresh start, or if the Phillies go out to look to trade you, you're not going to have a lot of suitors just based on how the season has played out and how last season, especially the end of last season, played out. Ford says, putting Taijuan out there in these games is friggin' malpractice. I agree. And he also thinks that it's going to cost them home field. Entirely possible. Ford, if you haven't followed yet, pretty negative about the Sixers, negative about the Phillies. Says the bats will go cold anyway and the Phils will fizzle again. Andrew Fawcett with the apt comparison, Adam Eaton. I believe we've talked about that on this show before. Every GM, no matter how good they are, every president of baseball ops, no matter how good they are, have one blemish on their record at least. Pat Gillick's was Adam Eaton. Taijuan Walker is absolutely Dave Dombrowski's. Let's see. There are a lot of people. We have people going back and forth. Jamie says, for the record, I don't want to see Walker either. Believe me, nice guy, just doesn't have it anymore. Let's see. We'll avoid some of the back and forth here. Josh says, I agree 100%, Jamie, but Walker gets the opportunity after opportunity while those guys had 2 or 3 solid chances, and Walker gets paid a ton. So we're going to see. We're going to find out what happens. Now, I'm done with the Phillies right now. Like I said, 9 games left to play, 6-game lead over the Mets. Barring some kind of horrific all-time collapse, they should be fine. They'll win that division. We really just have to keep an eye on what happens down the stretch between the Phillies and the Dodgers. If either or both of those teams go cold, then of course, like I mentioned before, you're still looking at the Yankees are legitimately in contention to have home field, and so are the Guardians. It really is a 4-team race right now for home field advantage. I wouldn't even consider the Padres. Padres have 87 wins. I think they're too far back. 4-team race, 2 in each league, going for home field throughout the playoffs. And as we all know, Red October, big thing in Philly. Home field advantage, big thing in Philly. JH says, I'm late, but my God, the Taijuan Walker experience strikes again. Exactly. Yes. 100%. Now, there's stuff that I want to get to. There are other things that I want to get to. We're done with the Phillies. We're done with the Sixers. We have some Flyer stuff. We have some Eagles stuff. Now, there's some Flyer stuff that I think is absolutely worth talking about. And those of you who don't like the Flyers, you can hang in, and we'll get to the Eagles here in a minute. But there's some good social media content going on right now over on the Flyers. And I'm gonna give them a lot of credit. I seriously will. I have said in the past that I think that the Flyers have some social media people who are very talented. And I think they brought somebody new in this past offseason. It's gotten significantly better. Their Twitter game is better. Their Instagram game is better. I've seen more of their stuff on TikTok. I think they're overall doing a better job. But there is a bit of content that came out on Thursday that we have to get to, okay? And it is something that I mentioned, Torts puts on a show. I think that was in the description of the episode. Now, since I technically host a show that is partnered with the Flyers, I don't expect there to be a takedown on YouTube. And if YouTube flags it, I will point out to them that we are partnered with the Flyers. Snow the Goalie is. And I had the little Snow the Goalie thing here. So we're just going to say that it's covered. But I do want to go to a piece of social media content that I found very entertaining. And I think even if you are a Torts critic, you had to watch it and say, this is good shit. This is good quality content. The Rope. Let's get into it. Flyers camp open, by the way. Flyers training camp. It's begun. Let's listen to the Flyers talk about the rope and what it means to John Tortorella.
I needed something for them to skate around in the ice, so we put it between the nets. That's how the rope came about.
It's hard not to hear about it.
Yeah, it's painful.
Everyone kind of feels the same way.
Inhumane.
I'm gonna find the rope and I think and burn it.
Bring your blades out and cut it right in half.
What is your least favorite part?
The skate test.
Absolutely hate the skate test, and I think everyone does.
Obviously you've heard it's hard. I've heard it's hard. I'm expecting it to be really hard.
That's poor Jamie Drysdale.
Just something that you got to grind through, really. It's you can do it.
Putting these tests over their head makes them think about it in the summertime. That's the biggest reason for it. And you sprawl on the ice and this stuff, that's what I like looking at. And you find out about what the athlete is about in those type of situations. Very physical, but more mental for me.
It's just we're all doing it together, and there's no quit, and it kind of puts that standard right into camp right away that like we're here together. And
It's a lot of mental too, just fighting through it. And I don't know if there's really any way to prepare for that test, but you just got to do it and grind through it.
Is it like they just won the Stanley Cup, they finished it? Or is it just, all right, there, okay, we're done with that. What's next? That's what it's about.
That laugh will haunt people in their nightmares. But so the rope, this big test, as we all know, if you're a Flyers fan, if you're an NHL fan, you know that Torts runs a ridiculous camp where the teams that he coaches tend to come out maybe the most physically fit of any team in the league. And the Flyers we saw last year, they came out as probably the most in-shape team. The Flyers obviously benefited in a massive way from goalies that played well above their level. Carter Hart, Sam Ersson, they both played incredibly well. You combine that with the fitness level of the team, and the Flyers had a much stronger start to last season than anyone expected them to. Now, I have many thoughts. We had a lot of these thoughts on Snow the goalie. Sean Couturier, by the way, came on. What a gem. What a mensch. Great guy. Couturier came on to the show this past week. He said that it's a clean slate this year, kind of referencing Torts and what happened late last season, getting named captain, getting benched, kind of getting publicly ridiculed by the coach, said it's a clean slate. Bundy said he tried to do a clean slate every year with Hitchcock, and we know that those two notoriously did not get along. There are a lot of feelings, a lot of thoughts that I have just about Torts' position with this team, the way that his voice is valued among people in the organization, perhaps more than it should be. A lot of thoughts. And very few of them, believe it or not, are influenced by the absolute bitchy cattiness that he displayed last year with Ant over on our show. Surprisingly, little of it has to do with that. It's more that this is fun. This is good social media content. In theory, it teaches a lot of these younger guys that you're trying to build into NHL players what a legitimate NHL camp could look like. Some might say that it's, the training of a team of yesteryear. I would simply point out there's no downside to this. The players, they might not like it, but again, they get themselves whipped up into shape pretty damn fast. Social stuff was good. I'm actually going to get back to a little bit more. Let's go back over to the comments. Andrew Fawcett says, Risto sighting. I almost paused the video there because there was a Rasmus Ristolainen sighting. JH agrees. Oh, hell yes. The social media has been amazing. I actually do want to see if I can find, there was, here it is. This was the one right here. So I don't know if you guys saw this. Again, if you're a Flyers fan, you probably did. And if you're not, you probably didn't. But the Flyers social media team did picture day. So they had, here's Mishkov, right? So I thought it was funny, especially because my kids just did picture day. I just think it was good, fun, quality content. There was another one somewhere. Oh, look at this. See, this is why I might not have a producer on this show. I might not have somebody who can do this for me like I do over on Crossing Broadcast, where we've got video guy Craig, or over on Snow the Goalie, where we have intern Andrew. But this was great. The Have a Great Season Hags, if you remember that from school, have a great summer. But all the players with their school pictures and their favorite quote. I'm trying to think, it was Joel Farabee. Opinions are like mixtapes. I don't want to hear yours. Nick Seeler. I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. Anyway, social media game for the Flyers. Significantly improved. Very good stuff. Let's see. I see some other stuff. JH says, the inhumane with the blurred face sends me every time. It was pretty good. It was good. Mr. Twitster says, Risto lives, I see. JH says, since it's the Flyers, can we call it 69 for 69 instead of 30 for 30? Josh White asks, where was Ryan Ellis? No idea. Andrew Fawcett says, Torts is sadistic. I kind of like it. AJ, our noted Rangers fan, who had to watch teams with Torts. And if I remember correctly, enjoyed Torts when he was the Rangers coach. I remember watching many Rangers games with AJ when Torts was the coach of the Rangers. A Torts team is always in insane shape, and they usually have no business playing at that level that they're at. But man, that only lasts so long till the team gets tired of Torts. This is actually the thing. We will talk about this during hockey season for sure. 100%. Like, I promise you this will come up. But like, Torts played a lot of the big hits that you play as you're a cup contending team that's ready to take the next step, that like needs to get over that final hump. Last year, he screwed up royally. And I don't think that there's any coming back from it. Like, what has been going around is that many of the players who went into last offseason not in favor of Torts coming back are not exactly thrilled that he is back again. I don't know if there's been a mea culpa. Torts doesn't strike me as a mea culpa guy. But what happened with Couturier at the end of last year wasn't just viewed negatively in the Flyers locker room or within the Flyers organization, but league-wide. There were people who used to be associated with this organization who have expressed, can't believe he did that to Couturier. There are people from other organizations who did the exact same thing. Said, I can't believe, like, we know what Torts is, but I can't believe he did that to Couturier of all guys. Especially given that, like, Couturier is a very respected player in the league, has played for this team his entire career since he was 18. Not a great look. The idea ultimately was galvanize the team to hate Torts so that they play in spite of him and they go on this magical run into the playoffs. And then maybe it's kind of like, oh, okay, now we see what he did. Except it didn't work. And the Flyers collapsed down the stretch last year and then missed the playoffs, ended up in hockey purgatory, didn't get to pick near like the top 7 or 8 or have the ability to move up and get a guy that I wanted, like Demidov. They ended up taking Lushenko, who, to his credit right now, has looked very good. There were, I think Charlie O'Connor tweeted about it yesterday that like Lushenko looks like he's in phenomenal shape. I think it was Charlie. It might not have been. I'm pretty sure it was, though. That Lushenko, the talk around camp is that he's been in insane shape and that the bag skate that Torts had them do at camp yesterday was like no issue at all for Lushenko. Very interesting stuff. Torts misplayed his hand last year. And when that kind of thing doesn't work, and when it's not a team that's ready to get over the hump and try to contend for a cup, you do run the risk of alienating a large segment of that locker room. And there is a legitimate question to be had that, like, if the season starts off poorly, which is entirely possible, they're playing out west to start the year. Not ideal. If that's what ends up happening, and if this team starts 1-9, 2-10, in theory, talent-wise, that is where they should be. But just based on what last year was, if the guys in the locker room immediately tune him out, could the Flyers move on? Could the Flyers make a coaching change? We're going to talk about all that stuff over the next few weeks, over the next few months. We will see where things go. I'm not convinced that Torts, it's more likely than not that they let him finish out the year. I think that ultimately the Flyers want to have him with the organization long-term, probably in an advisory role, because he does bring value there. I think Torts is a very smart hockey guy. I think Torts is a very good coach. I just don't think he's the right coach at this time. Now, if he can prevent himself from falling back into some of his tropes and falling back into some of the negative things that we look at and that players look at and don't like. And not just because like they superficially don't like having to have a hard training camp, but like they think this guy's just a dick for the sake of being a dick. This is the guy who sits Travis Sanheim in front of his friends and family on the road. This is the guy who sits Bobby Brink in front of his friends and family. This is the guy who, if they had the option to go play in Russia, would absolutely sit Matvei Mishkov in front of his friends and family. Like, if he can avoid those things and instill very good values in some of these younger guys, especially Mishkov, and get them in the right mentality of how to be a pro and help Bobby Brink take the next step, let's say. Help a guy like Jet Lashenko who might get a look and might not for those first 9 games. Help him kind of figure out what it is to be a pro. Help a guy like Oliver Bonk, who probably won't make the team to start or probably wouldn't go beyond the 9-game tryout in the beginning of the year. But like, put the thought in his head of this is what it's like to be a pro. Then I'm fine. Like, then Torts can stay by all means. But if he falls into the other stuff that just comes off as petty, or he makes a decision to bench a Sean Couturier and then doesn't talk to the media, sends out, who the hell was it last year? Oh my God, why is the guy's name escaping me? Bradshaw. Looks like Heath Jones. Sends Brad Shaw out to do all of the post-game press conferences and all of the media availabilities, and then kind of couches it in, oh, you know, there's family out of town, there's this, there's that. There's always an excuse when there's a controversial decision made. If Torts can avoid that, then great. Like, be the mentor to these young guys. And then stay with the organization long-term as an advisor. No issue there. But, like, you can't get petty. The one thing this team cannot allow to have happen this year, they cannot allow Torts to get petty with Mishkov. Because this fan base, for as much as, like, it was sort of fractured around Couturier, it will be almost unanimous disapproval of whatever Torts does to Mishkov. If Torts sits Mishkov for 2-3 games or benches him in like the first half of a first period and doesn't let him play the rest of the game, the fans will fucking revolt. There's no way around it. That will happen. And in fairness, it will probably happen that Torts will try to make an example of Mishkov at some point. I think that ultimately, just based on what we know, based on the things that veteran players in the KHL had said about Mishkov, in a positive way, not a negative one, he doesn't accept mediocrity. He works his ass off. He expects a high standard. I think Mishkov's actually going to be like Torts' favorite player. I do. I think that there's a scenario here where those guys are just like locked in together. And you almost see Mishkov like become the on-ice embodiment of like what Torts wants. Kind of becomes like, to some extent, you know, Konechny kind of shows a lot of that fire that you would think that Torts would want. Sealer plays a lot in the way that Torts wants to see you play. If Mishkov kind of takes that and like is a hair on fire kind of guy, and Torts still allows him, doesn't try to beat out of him the idea of being creative, of trying in Michigan or whatever. Like, if he just lets Mishkov be Mishkov, and Mishkov raises the level and the standard, then like all of a sudden, like I still don't think the team's gonna be very good. But man, that sets a very good possibility of like future success, especially with Mishkov and potentially with some of the guys on this team. Gonna go out to the comments really quick. JH asks, now that we're talking about the Flyers, did Russ talk about Dylan Robillard coming back on Twitter with a different fake name and privating his account? I did not. But since you asked, I wasn't going to bring it up. But since somebody asked, I have to just very briefly. For those of you who remember, I went on a little bit of a profanity-laced tirade not that long ago when the Gaudreaus passed away in a tragic accident. And I got really worked up because there was a local there was a blogger, young guy, somebody who actually tried to work for Snow the goalie. And I don't fault him for that at all. Like, we put out a thing that we wanted to have some people help do some work for us, whether it was written content, whether it was social content. He reached out. He had a nice following. He had worked for the Hockey News. There was like a weird kind of end there. I don't remember all the details around something about pay. He landed with Flyers Nitty Gritty. Lots of different thoughts and feelings about that outlet. Seem like nice people, maybe kind of don't always get the journalism thing. But he's the one who reported early and reported something that he shouldn't have, that the Gaudreaus had passed away. and really couched it with this idea of like, well, I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure, and then put out some information that was correct and some that was very incorrect. I'm looking for the tweet right now. I can't find it, but somebody found it yesterday that Dylan Robillard went out and started a new account. And the reason that like I found it so gross isn't because I don't think he should get like another start. I think he should absolutely be able to try to go out and find a job doing, if he wants to try to cover hockey, by all means, he can certainly try. But it was more that he changed the name on his account, and his account itself was actually kind of gross. Let me see. He got rid of it. I have to see if somebody can find. JH, if you can find it, if you can shoot that to me in a DM. What Dylan ended up doing was he rebranded his account with a different name. And then in the bio of the profile, in what I would call reprehensible and gross, he put the date of the Gaudreaus being killed in that accident. And then the cover image for the profile is the Calgary Flames tribute to Johnny Gaudreau. What the fuck? Like, seriously. The guy who, like, said that Gaudreau was killed in Philly and that other people in his family were killed, implying more than one. The guy who, like, rushed to put that out and say he wasn't 100% sure. And then doubled down and said, well, people think I'm an asshole anyway. Like, had some back and forths with me and other people at the time. This fucking guy has been going around putting out things about their passing and trying to, like, I don't know if it was engagement farming. I don't know what it was. It was just weird. Like, the whole thing was weird. And the fact that, like, he tried to rebrand his Twitter account, I don't blame him. Okay, like, it's fine. Like, in theory, if you had a Twitter account that has a good following, you could change the handle, you could change the branding. I would have probably told him it would have been smarter to, like, try an outlet instead of a name, like maybe create a new hockey site. You have a good following there. Scrub your social so that people maybe don't realize it's you. And at some point they're like, the hell is this account that I'm following? I don't remember following this. And like go from there. But like to put their date of their passing and to put the tribute as like the cover image is so fucking weird. I know I'm F-bombing a lot now, but like it's so strange. And like, in fairness, there were other people. I'm not going to do it right now. I could, but I'm just kind of sick of being mean about the fact that like grown-ass adults don't know how to be empathetic. Like, there are people who I have moments where I'm like, you're trying to cover a team, you're trying to cover a sport, and I can't figure out if you understand the difference between trying to like cover it down the middle or being a fanboy and trying to use access to like drum up some kind of like engagement. But there's like one person I can definitely think of, and I may or may not have already mentioned their outlet, but like there was somebody who for like the next 5 or 6 days after the Gaudreaus were killed was quote tweeting himself promoting a story that he wrote about Matthew Gaudreau like 3 years prior and just kept like spamming it and like kept putting it out and then would like just tweet like random stuff about like being sad about their death. And like was just very clearly like engagement farming or has like the maturity of a 12-year-old. Like I can't figure out what it is, but man, it just felt gross. You can express like people grieve how they grieve. If you don't know these people and you have this like kind of weird parasocial relationship or like, I just don't get it. I really don't. And in the case of this guy, he just never seemed to understand. And he never seemed to like want to take any kind of responsibility for what he did. And I just don't get it. I really don't. I think it's just a total disgrace. And I think that the way that this guy went about it is just frankly disgusting. But he's now made this account private. JH just pointed out over in the comments that, Dylan made his new account private. And I hope for his sake that at some point he can just, I don't know. I just don't know. I just got a flag, by the way. So I saw JH tried to DM this thing to me. And I got some kind of flag, it looks like, on my Instagram account because I'm streaming to Instagram Live. I have to like flag this to Instagram. It's very strange that they sent that, but whatever. So I can't pull it up. But in fairness, like, it's gross. I'm done with that guy. I'm done talking about him. Flyers topic. Done. Let's turn the page really quickly. I'll go over here really quick. AJ says, you call it a little bit of profanity. I call it passion. Andrew calls the other guy a scumbag. Jamie says that guy will never admit he was wrong for what he did. For that reason, he should never claim to be a journalist or even try. Andrew says the days of creating your name for yourself through shock journalism are over. I think it's probably pretty true. And Mind Munchies YT says, snow the goalie to the moon. Can't wait for hockey season, Russ. I appreciate that. I did notice, by the way, what was the person's name? It was somebody who was new to the stream. It was Dean Hartscrabble said he found the show through Snow the Goalie. So I appreciate that. All of these people, all these hockey people are going to start finding their way to the show. The numbers have been going up, by the way. For the most part, over on YouTube, you can see numbers are going up a little bit. In the podcast feed, they're going up. It's through the help of all of you. You like the video, you shared the video, you subscribed, you go back after the show's live, you leave a little comment, your favorite part of the episode, if there's something that you want answered on the next show. Those things help. I don't know why. YouTube thinks that they're like really good for engagement, so it's fine. You help me, I help you. I try to do this content. You enjoy it, or you comment on it, or you don't like it, you leave it in the comment section. We're all happy. Everybody's hunky-dory. I've been using that phrase a lot on the show, by the way. I'm like starting to find that I fall into a couple of repeated phrases. I used hunky-dory like 2 or 3 times on Tuesday's episode, and I don't think I had used it for like 3 years prior. I don't know if I had one today. Last thing I want to get to, Eagles, Saints, Sunday. Could be a very good game. Could be a potential game that we all sit back and go, oh shit, are we on our way to 1-3 to 1-4? The Bill Belichick rumors start to get a little bit louder. Eagles and Saints should, in theory, I'm looking right now because I have a feeling of where the line for that game is going to be and what the over-under is going to look like. So Eagles and Saints per DraftKings, over-under is set at 49.5, which is the highest total of Sunday, except for the Lions-Cardinals game has an over-under of 51. So the odds makers clearly believe that we're going to see a high-scoring game between an Eagles offense that is likely going to be without A.J. Brown. I believe he's already been ruled out. A high-powered Eagles offense against a very high-powered Saints offense. Derek Carr playing arguably the best football of his career. Alvin Kamara absolutely tearing defenses to shreds, including the Cowboys last week. 4 touchdowns, 3 on the ground, 1 through the air. This could be a massive, massive high-scoring game. If you're the Eagles, what do you need to do? What do you need to make sure you walk away from Sunday feeling good about? You can't get gutted by Kamara. Let Derek Carr beat you. Like, that is ultimately what the Eagles are going to have to do. If Jordan Davis is this run stuffer, right? If we don't expect him to be a factor in the passing game, if Jalen Carter is going to continue to get doubled because the edge rush doesn't exist, if the Eagles are able to stack the box, take away Kamara, and you have to let Derek Carr beat you, that's the way to go. Try to shut down the running game as best you can. Have a spy on Kamara the entire game. If Derek Carr beats you, he beats you. But that has to be the defense's entire game plan going into Sunday. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, it's pretty simple. Give the ball to Barkley. You hope that Hurts is going to make some better reads. You hope that Devontae Smith is going to be able to exploit some mismatches. You have to hope that at some point there's maybe a busted coverage, that you get to see a deep ball to Dotson. Maybe you get to see Dallas Goedert actually get some targets. I mean, he was such a minimal part of the game plan this past week against the Falcons that I was like kind of shocked. Truly, like last Friday, I said, all right, well, Goddard's going to play a big role. He's always been the security blanket, the safety blanket. He wasn't against the Falcons. You have to hope that he's a bigger part of the game. So if you have Goddard that you can rely on, you have Barkley you can rely on, Smith you hope is going to be able to create some separation. In theory, the Eagles should be able to go into New Orleans and win. Now, they are a 3-point underdog. It's not the biggest spread. They're not being viewed as like a massive underdog, but they're a 3-point road dog. Now, if the Eagles had beaten the Falcons, do I think that that's maybe closer? Maybe the Saints are a 1.5-point favorite? Yeah, probably. We'll see how this one plays out. I have a feeling if I had to put money on it, I probably would take the Saints to win. And I'd probably take the Saints to cover. I think this could end up being a 10-point game. Could end up being a 10-point Saints win. I don't like throwing those picks out. Don't use my picks, okay? You can go read the stuff that I write on Crossing Broad or on any of the other sites that we work with the parent company. Like you can go do a little Google search and find the stuff that I write during the course of a week. But like, I wouldn't necessarily bet on this game. I actually am going to stay away from it. Now, what could be a worthwhile prop at longer odds? Maybe Jalen Hurts to score the first touchdown of the game. Something makes me think that we're going to see Jalen Hurts use his legs a lot in this game, and that maybe we're going to see the Eagles run the tush-push more, and that maybe we're going to see Saquon Barkley run more north-south, and there are going to be a lot of short yardage opportunities. I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Hurts scores the first touchdown of the game. Come back to me on Tuesday. Let's see if that one plays out. I'm going to go over to the comments real quick before we head out. JH thinks it's going to be an implosion. Mr. Twitster says, I've never been hunky and Dory at the same time. It's one or the other. When you're here in the comments of the Russ Joy Show, you can be hunky and Dory at the same time. JH says, Billy Boy takes over at halftime. Book it. Belichick's just going to come in with the ripped hoodie. I actually did want to, I was starting to think, maybe it's time to get the sleeveless hoodies made. Might be time. Josh White says, without AJ, we have to find a way to incorporate Goddard more. That's what was shocking to me about the Atlanta game, is that without AJ, they went to Calcutta a lot, but they didn't go to Goddard nearly enough. It seemed like they had Goddard in for a lot more blocking situations, which is fine, but I don't know. Brandon Ficarra says, 15 targets to Covey. Let's freaking go. And then finally, Josh White says, give my love to Ant and his family this weekend. So that marks the end of our show. Like I said, keep an eye on social because I guarantee there will be stuff going up from the San Filippo wedding on Saturday. Rev Russ makes his debut as an officiant of a wedding. I think it's going to go fine. Ant's hair was on point. In fairness, the man shaved his head and looked like Uncle Fester a few months ago and said, I'm going to grow it out and it'll be the right length in time for the wedding. And I said, you realize that barbers can just cut your hair to the length that you want right before your wedding. He's like, no, it's going to be fine. And then yesterday, I think it was, I was on the phone with him. He's like, yeah, I'm going to go in for a little trim before the wedding. I'm like, so you shaved your head, looked like Uncle Fester for months, and you're still going to go get a haircut right before the wedding anyway. My friend makes no sense.
He doesn't make any sense to me.
But it's going to be a nice wedding.
Lots of Italians. We're going to have a lot of talk. We're going to probably see who puts what in the gravy.
It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. There will probably be stuff on the Snow the Goalie channel. I fully expect that Bundy will be tweeting about it. He might be live tweeting. We've been joking about doing a Press Row show. We might end up on the Snow the Goalie channel, do a Press Row show recap post-game of the ceremony, Bundy and I. I'm not positive. I'm not saying it will happen from the cocktail hour, but I'm saying there's a non-zero chance that it happens. So keep your eyes peeled there. I'll be back here on Tuesday with the Russ Joy Show. We'll shoot for 8:30. I'm going to try to be a little bit better. We'll shoot for 8:30 on Tuesday. Monday, I'll be back at noon on Crossing Broadcast. So, Monday, Crossing Broadcast, noon. Tuesday, 8:30, Russ Joy Show. There's nothing Wednesday. Maybe there's Snow the Goalie. I don't know. Thursday, Crossing Broadcast at noon. Usually, I'm there with Kincaid. And then Friday, Russ Joy Show, 8:30. If you haven't done so already, please, seriously, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Subscribe. Hit the like button. Like button. Very big. Very big for the YouTube algorithm. They love that. They love the like button. Hit the like button. Share the video. Send it to friends. Send it to family. Put it on your Facebook profile. Put it on X. I don't care where you put it. Just share it to somebody because YouTube loves that. And then, of course, if you have in the past, go subscribe to the podcast feed. It's available over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. And I'll be back on Tuesday. Looking over here, Andrew Fawcett says, have a great weekend. Don't screw it up. Jamie says, enjoy the wedding. Congrats to Ant and his bride. And Brandon wants me to get some video of Bundy dancing. I'll do my best. Your best. Losers always whine about their best. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen. Carla was the prom queen. Really? If you haven't seen the movie The Rock with Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage, that interaction alone is worth watching it. Go watch that this weekend. Go back and watch old episodes of this show. I'll talk to all of you Tuesday. Let's hope the Eagles win. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I don't know. Talk to you on Tuesday. Have a great day, everybody.